We're going to talk about several topics related to regulatory process, including regulatory agencies, their responsibilities and obligations, and your role. Everybody needs to deal with regulatory agencies, so we're going to also talk about the purpose and the role of regulatory agencies, the processes that they have to go through, and most importantly for us down in local government working with these regulatory agencies. There is a process for regulatory rule making. And in general, making rules, it's a political process, and that political process involves a number of groups, special interest groups, the lobbyists you always hear about. It might be a group who's concerned with a specific problem that's affecting them. Uh, Hopefully, most of the time, it's has to do or driven by people who speak up, or the majority. And then sometimes it's driven by uh, just a small group of people who are affected. It isn't a perfect system, but it is a system that is able to generally change over time and account for problems that come up, and does give an opportunity for people with special interests, and that includes people in public works like us, to make our opinion known and to help drive the process. Groups like APWA or ASCE all are interest groups. We have people who talk to elected officials and to regulators, and always try to make them shape rules that will be beneficial or help our particular business, public works. So it's an open process, and I think one of the questions everybody needs to think about is, even though the rules might not be to our liking, we have to face the fact that we have to work with them, and there is a way to change them. And so you always have to make sure that you can say yes to the question, do you participate in your regulator's rulemaking? As far as administrating rules are concerned, when you have a set of finalized rules, they don't allow discretion and judgment. Hopefully, they don't allow unequal treatment. Everybody gets treated the same, and that may be good or bad depending on your opinion. Also, the administrative process, administering rules, does not allow exceptions. I think as a regulator, and a lot of you be regulators, regulating or administrating things like soil erosion or wetland, floodplain, and most commonly connections to driveways or sewers where you need a permit. I think one of the things you like to have in the system is ability to allow some discretion. You manage that discretion so that you can be flexible, and also so you don't hold up development or other work. In any case, regardless of what you do, you want to make sure everybody gets treated the same, regardless of personalities. There's no place for personality in administration of regulations. You also like to have some type of appeals process so that you can account for those special instances, and they maybe once every decade, that come up where something different does need to be done. You agree, your applicant may agree, everybody wants them done. And so a good regulatory process, whether it's state, federal, city, county, needs to be able to handle exceptions. The standard process, though, up front doesn't allow for exceptions, or it's a very difficult process. So again, a takeaway is, how do you handle permit issue that falls outside the rules? How do you want your system to be viewed as far as regulators? things, especially at local government, is that we're very concerned. We're closer to the people, business developers, than at state or federal agencies, and so we care about what people think. And the regulatory process and agencies are organizations that shape how people think of us. So how we run them is really important. For most of us, though, while we do regulate, we end up spending a lot of time dealing with regulatory agencies. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what we need to do to be able to deal with them in a reasonable manner. Regulators, when you ask them what we need to do, is we need to be willing to communicate with them. And written, verbal, generally early in the process, before you send in an application, you need to be able to talk with them. You need to be able to share ideas and listen to what they say as far as their rules and regulations are concerned. You have to remember, as I mentioned a minute ago, they don't have a lot of flexibility always in what they do. And so when we go to them and ask for different things, things that fall outside the regulations, often they can't do anything. But if we don't understand that, or if we browbeat them because they can't, it can make a difficult situation bad. I think regulators don't necessarily, even though there are fixed rules, shy away from innovation, but you'll find that you always have to justify and justify and justify something different so that they can go through their process of an exception, which will tend to be very rigorous. They have the data. They don't want to be looking bad to people they deal with, and they want to be helpful if they can. Regulators, again, if you get with them close enough and keep the personalities out of it, will help develop situations. They will be considerate of your need for funding, although uh, often a rule is a rule, and as a city or county person, local government, we have to worry about the funding, not them. And often they will help. They'll know where funding is often, and they'll at least let you know where it is. Now that's general. Again, place to place, state to state, federal agency to federal agency. There's a little difference, but again, part of the problems you see is that regulations and rules don't allow much variance from what's written down in black and white. And at the city and local government, as engineers, we're solving problems. Sometimes the black and white doesn't help us get the job done, and we end up dealing with regulators and trying to convince them that there should be a different way to do it, and how can they help us get there. Again, what we need to do as public works people is we need to be creative. And just because there are rules and regulations doesn't mean you just fall down or fall back and do what the rules say. You want to be innovative and creative. You want to provide good data for an exception, say if you need that, or to at least justify what the regulations ask for. You need to gather public support. And sometimes it's just the local property owners you're dealing with or businesses. You may have to involve elected officials, and not in a heavy-handed way, but to write a letter of support saying they think it's a good idea or that they think it fits within this rule, and you need to do that. Sometimes you may need to go to the media to help you, and sometimes you may have to go to court to make your point and to get a regulator to listen to you. You don't start at the court, though. You always work your way up and try your best to deal with an individual regulator, and see where you go from there. Sometimes you can testify public hearings when rules are under consideration or they sunset or they're being reconsidered for a reenactment. Again, sometimes you'll do it as an individual or as a public works director, the person in your position, or representing the city or county. Sometimes you'll go as a representative of APWA or ASCE and try to, again, bring technical insight to elected officials who don't have a lot of technical background usually. Also, one of the things you can do is always support uh, funding for research that supports or helps make better rules and regulations. Rules and regulations hopefully generally aren't just derived from somebody's wild thought out of the sky, but they come from good research. And by supporting research programs, you can help ultimately make good rules and regulations. Also, there's some other things you need to do. You can't just sit back. You want to, if there's a problem with a rule that you see as a technical person, you want to get those rules changed. You want to work in a positive way to get those changed. You want to be active in APWA or in a council or board to be able to help leverage your influence. You want to always promote good science. And you want to be a partner in implementing and helping that agency do its job. Again, the rules and regulations and the regulators come from law. They start at rules that Congress makes and the president approves. Those laws get turned into rules and regulations. Agencies are set up to manage the regulations. It cascades down to us. Saying they'll go away isn't a practical thing. Rules can and are positive. They help protect people, environment, all the things that our society needs to keep going. And so it's better to try to help partner with regulatory agencies, helping them get their job done, and helping, again, being responsible agencies and officials. We all really are working towards the same results. We want to protect things that need to be protected. And somebody has to have some rules and regulations. We know that, people being people. And so that's one of our jobs is to help support the system. We want to support, though, a good regulatory system. When you work with regulators, you want to understand and respect what they're doing. Again, I certainly expect that they uh, respect what we're doing in our positions. And it's a mutual thing. It is important. It's worth standing up for and demanding that you be respected. But if you're going to demand respect, you have to give it. You have to make projects a shared idea. It can't just be them or us. It has to be we, and that will help often to get a job. After all, they are vested in their rules and regulations. They know that they shape projects. They will buy into a project if you approach them properly and make them part of your project as opposed to just an obstacle to be overcome. And you know, once you get your permit, you need to do the work that you said you'll do. There's nothing worse than getting a permit than ignoring it. You don't like it when you give a driveway permit or a sewer tap and somebody does a bad job or doesn't follow the rules, and there's no reason to believe why a state or federal regulator or some other regulator would want you violating the terms of your permit. Keep your word. You see, we're talking about respect, keeping words, a lot more than just engineering and science, but how to deal in a forthright manner with people. If you have any questions, please feel free to call me. I appreciate your time. Sorry that we couldn't cover everything earlier. And send me an email anytime. I'll be glad to talk. Also, um, regulations is covered extensively in Chapter 11 of the Public Works Administration book that you'll be receiving. And so reach chapter 11. It'll fill in all the blanks for you. Thank you.